What's going on, guys? Cody from Motorcycle MD. I have a short and sweet one for you. A very common issue on many bikes, in particular this VT1100, leaks a little bit of oil. Yes, Hondas do leak some oil. Generally they don't, but in most cases it's in a couple of areas. One, on older bikes or whatever, the Kickstarter seal, which is identical pretty much to the video I'm going to show you now, on the shift shaft seal, which is very common, GL 1500s, 1100s, it can happen to any bike, alright, any bike. It's not just Honda, it's not just a brand. Shift shaft seals are very common, okay? You got a shaft running through a rubber seal that gets abused its entire life. Motors heat up, they cool down, things change, and you have a shaft running inside of a seal, twisting back and forth. It jacks the seal up over time, and it's really easy to replace them. The other common places that I find in pretty much any motorcycle, oil drains. Not putting a new crush washer on the oil drain bolt. Got to do it every time. It's aluminum. Just replace it. Maybe you can get one or two or three even if you push it, but just replace it. And the oil filter. Under tightening. And oh yeah, the other one. When people go into their bike and they don't really know what they're doing when it comes to gaskets or sealant or whatever, or they just say, I don't need any of it, and put the cases back on, typically the motors leak then. But in most cases, Honda has a pretty good reputation of not leaking oil. Unless you're talking about almost any older motor that's got about 50 years on it, there's some problems there. But regardless, this video is short, it's sweet, it's going to show you guys exactly the technique it takes to just getting one of those seals out. Some of them are easy, some of them are a little bit difficult. GL 1500, it's buried behind the frame and you really got to use some ingenuity and common sense to get that seal out. But it's pretty much the same application when it comes to removal, cleaning up, installing those seals the best way that you can to keep all the oil where it belongs inside of the motor. So enough said, enjoy the video. Alright, so here we go. VT1100. This one has a heel toe shifter, which means it has floorboards as well. Pretty cool. Nice system. But you can see that sign of oil right there underneath that shifter. Okay? All on the bottom of the motor. A couple places that these VT1100s can leak. This is the major one. This is a major one on a couple different bikes. Most oil leaks that we see, or I see, are usually right here. So do a good job of cleaning this all up. Now's the time. Everything's out of the way. You can really get in there and get it all nice and clean how it should be. So, I start here with a rounded flathead screwdriver, really just trying to get some movement out of it. These things, sometimes they pop right out. Sometimes they are a little bit finicky, like this one was. But the goal is to just get in there with as little damage as possible, so we don't have to remove the cover or anything like that. We're just trying to get some movement on the back end of that seal. Behind the seal is more metal. It kind of sits into a recessed hole, if you will. So we don't want to score up any of the shifter lever or that shift shaft that's kind of hanging out, so we're not prying up against that. We're just kind of using the case as well as some strength of our own fingers to kind of just pry it and get any movement as we can. You see, I also bring in a little 90-degree pick. That works great. The one I was using is kind of a skinny shaft on it, and the ones with handles on them are a lot better. But yeah, so we're just going to continue to try to get any kind of movement we can out of this thing. You're going to potentially destroy this seal, and that's totally okay because we don't need it anymore. So if you rip out the little spring cup seal thing that is inside of it, don't worry about it. You can destroy the seal as much as you want. At one point in this, I even go into grabbing the flathead screwdriver and just kind of giving it a tap inward on one corner just to kind of bend in a section of it to see if I can get it to move, and finally it does begin to move. Now I'm going to start pulling outwards all around it. We're working all around it until it eventually pops out. And there you have it. She's out. She's ugly. She's trash. Now we got to clean up that whole space in there. I use Q-tips all the time. I want to dry it up as much as possible, see what's left behind. On this seal in particular, there is a metal band that wraps around that seal. It's not just rubber. It does have some structure to it. And a lot of the rubber, you can't really see it in this video, but it's stuck to the inside. It's just stuck there. So, a little 90-degree flathead. It's not super sharp. It's not hard to get this rubber off, but I do want the cleanest surface possible for this seal to stick in there and stay for another 60,000 miles or however long. So once that's all cleaned up, contact cleaner, Q-tips, again, backing it all up in there, because oil sometimes can kind of leak and want to work its way out, and that's okay. This seal's purpose is to keep oil back. There won't be gushing out, but there may get a drop or two while you're working, so I try to keep it as clean as possible. Cool tip, I was going to use some electrical tape, but I decided to do this one, which is just grab like a rubber glove, a nitrile glove, wrap it around the shaft. It protects the shaft, if you will. Grease or oil, whatever you want to use. I would use grease on the seal. That's the biggest help when it comes to seals and O-rings, getting them nice and greased up or oiled up. Okay, so I started, as you saw, just pushing the seal in with my fingers just to kind of get it nice and level. Grab a socket, grab something that is at least sitting on 75% of that seal, and you're going to want to hit it in. Go as large as you can on the socket. That's not going to be hitting the case, obviously, and I just kind of work that socket around until the outer section of the seal is flush with the case. That's all we want. I want that whole face of that seal just nice and flush. Not inward, not too outward, just nice and flush. Continue to clean it up, and it worked great. Obviously, you see that I used no silicone seal. Doesn't need it. It's a pretty tight fit. Grab some moly paste, go around the threads as I always do with any threaded part on a motorcycle. Grab that heel toe shifter, line it up with that hole as you see right, bink, there. Clean it all up, clean the bolt up, contact cleaner, throw some Loctite on it. Blue, orange, red, whatever you got. Some is good. A little drop will do. Go ahead and tighten that down. You definitely want to check to make sure that that shifter, which I see all the time on bikes, shifter's loose on those shift shafts. We want it to be nice and snug. No movement whatsoever on that shaft. That's what jacks up those threads. And that, my friends, is how you do it. Alright, that's it. As you can see, pretty straightforward. That one was a little bit more difficult than most seals that I've dealt with. Regardless, the process is always the same. Yes, they do make some cool tools when it comes to seal pullers that actually have like different elbows. So when you get inside of the seal, you can kind of use the elbow of the tool on the point to kind of pry it out. I don't have one of those, and I've never really needed one based off of this technique. Now, if you do happen to jack up that shift shaft because you didn't listen and you just pried all up against it, now it's all jagged on the inside where that seal rides, that needs to be really, really smooth when it rotates back and forth inside that seal. So if that happened, if you marred it up a little bit, do the best that you can with just smoothing it out. I'm not saying to take a file to it and turn it down to make it all nice and smooth, but just use a little bit of 1000 grit sandpaper, clean up after yourself. Just ensure that that shaft section that the seal is in is nice and smooth. And if you guys want more tips, helpful tricks when it comes to maintenance, basic stuff, and cool tune-up and maintenance stuff that you can apply pretty much instantly, join the mailing list. I try to send out the coolest information that I can to you guys, and I would hate for you to miss out on it. The card up here will help navigate you to that mailing list, as well as a link in the description below. As always, Cody from Motorcycle MD, bringing you guys quality tips and tricks for your next build or your daily rider. See you guys next time. Later.